And is that where you get your kicks?
Yeah, watching the team and like often sitting in a meeting and just asking the odd question or throwing the odd grenade in. I love doing.
And seeing how they react.
Yeah.
That is a nice feeling. Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Unedited Pod with me, Ed Gould. So I've just been listening back to the conversation that you're about to hear, and it's one of my favourites so far, and the reason for that is, and I must warn you, it's very honest, and it's honest from the point of view of two guys that have done well, one more than the other potentially, and we get into a lot of issues around mental health on this pod, and the reason that this is a really good listen is because the story that we're going to hear is one of huge success, but not one without impact and cost. So Paul took a business called Wiggle.com from the back room of a bicycle shop to a £180 million sale. So a huge and exciting story about one of the fastest scaling businesses that you're going to hear about. And these guys were really on the front end of e-commerce. They were really in at the right time, but they also experienced all sorts of growing pains that he's going to tell you about that could help you and your work. So if you're in e-commerce or you're trying to build a brand online, this is a great conversation for you. But more than that, if you're anyone that feels the stress and the pressure of high-level work, then this is also a great pod to listen to. We're going to get into topics like inferiority complexes, how to build teams that are more sustainable and resilient to mental health challenges, and really how succeeding can also have pressures on you as well. But it's not just about Wiggle.com and that topic. It's also, we're going to get into things including Green Snow, Paul's new brand that helps teams like Team Sky do logistics and fulfillment and brand work, which is really exciting. And we're also going and dig into what good looks like for good investments for someone like Paul. And this is really interesting because Paul's just got involved with Pure e-scooters, which I'm sure you're aware of. Lots of regulatory impact on that in the UK, but surely the future of mobility. So if you want to hear an absolute roller coaster ride of a scaling business from someone that understands how to make brands work, how to build brands, and how to help brands succeed, this is the episode for you. So if you're ready, sit back, relax. It's time for another unedited conversation. Here we are in the Black Box Studios. I call it Louis' special Black Box Studios, and I'm here today with Paul. And today we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, from scaling businesses, selling them, mental health, the trials and tribulations of all of those things. But as usual, to kick off, Paul, start by telling us who you are, a bit about your background, where you come from.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Ultimately, my world has been around sports for the majority of it. I'm 40-odd-year-old. I'm in denial still about being in my 40s, but 40.
Me too.
That's right. Still dressing like a teenager and believing that. But I spent all my time in my business world and career world working in e-commerce, and I've been really fortunate to be on an incredible journey with a number of amazing brands. And learning on the way, I'm somebody who did okay at school, left school, with a startling memory still that's ingrained in me every day of I need to stop worrying about bikes and concentrating on school and education, otherwise I'm never going to get anywhere in life. And that was written on one of my end-of-year books from my for my head of year. And honestly, that message sits with me all the time in everything I've done. And I still refer to it in a number of things I'm doing. Do quite a lot with young individuals, and I reference it there because, I think we are often pushed as a young person at school and college that this is absolutely paramount. We have to do this, and you have to do this, otherwise you're never going to get anywhere in life. And actually, I'd like to think in my own little world, I've shown that that's not quite, correct.
So the message that they gave you was what?
You need to stop concentrating on bikes.
On bikes?
Yeah, because I was into cycling then. Stop concentrating on bikes and concentrate on school, otherwise you're never going to get anywhere in life.
Okay. Let's
And
see
we,
how
and we'll
that
get
works
we'll get
out.
on that journey in a minute. But yeah, so and I think it's a brilliant thing. And so yeah, school was great fun for me. Really enjoyed it, and went to college. Jumped in and out of college. Did A levels. Realised I'm not very academic and not great in that world. So went off and did hotel management. And for some reason, that's when I realised I've got this obsessive head, and a head in me that just thinks I can always be better. And why can't I be that person? So 18 months into that, I've finished college. I've become Young Waiter of the Year. I've won some catering competitions. I worked at a Michelin star restaurant, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Okay. And then just went off traveling and went snowboarding and into America and did Camp America and worked with young disabled children in the Hamptons. And that for me was probably the most rewarding, incredible job I've ever done. Seeing these individuals that were just the most amazingly headstrong people that were from the toughest parts of New York coming into the Hamptons and having a dream summer where they stepped away from their kind of education, the tough world that they lived in, and lived on this summer house and just had an amazing summer. And all their bullying and all the troubles that they were enduring most of the time just disappeared. And for me, that was just the greatest 2 summers I ever had. And it was also very cool because I got to do one amazing thing, which was I played tennis with the Fonz.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so
Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler was
The
there.
Fonz.
Yeah.
Did you beat him?
I can't remember, but I remember. Yeah, so
Hey.
he used to come. Yeah, so and that was great. We got to meet all these amazing individuals there who funded this summer camp. And what I learned there really was certain things that maybe I'd kind of got through my younger days, but looking after and investing in the younger generation is so crucial, and giving people the chance and giving people the opportunity. And when you give those young people an opportunity to do something, they can really shine and deliver. And I think as we go through today, my working career has been a success to some regard, but a success because of amazing young people we've brought through the business. We've just allowed them to flourish, and they've delivered incredibly well. And we'll touch on some of that in a bit. But so I did Camp America for a couple of years and snowboarding, and then came back to the UK and worked in a bike shop back into the cycling world. So now my cycle stopped concentrating on bikes is then having an effect. And then in 1999, 2000, I got chatting to a couple of guys that set up a business called Wiggle.com. And I joined them early in 2000, and that was the most amazing
And that's
decade.
the start of
and that's the start of it. So that was the most amazing decade of my life. It was an unbelievable journey, building a e-commerce business at the start of the e-com, boom, when everyone was on a modem still, and people were trying to place an order online but didn't really understand it. Websites were taking ages to run. People wanted to send in checks and cash for their orders and didn't understand how this thing worked. And I went in there as the 5th employee because they were trading out of the back of a bike shop. And ultimately I was, ended up running Wiggle for many, many years.
And to contextualize for listeners, oh dear listener, if you don't know what Wiggle.com was, this was a company that expanded extremely quickly, became very successful, and I think sold for around the 180
Yeah, so
million
180
mark.
million. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that journey for a bit. That started in a few bikes in the back of a shop, a computer on a dial-up modem, and then within 10 years you're exiting for huge sums of money. What does that journey feel like? What part did you play, and how did it play out?
It still feels amazing. It still feels amazing because in the sector and the channel that I love, which is cycling and sports, it was the biggest thing. And so I still feel a sense of pride for what we achieved there, and I'm still involved in the sport, and I'm, I guess, still recognised and known for the journey that we went on Wiggle, and it's still brilliant, and it was just wonderful. And challenging and horrendous, and crikey, let's not sugarcoat it. It was awful and horrendous at times, but it was the first thing I remember is that you're battling with an archaic retail system. So consumers are used to going into the stores. we're talking about Amazon in its early days here. E-commerce wasn't a thing. Mail order was a big thing. So in the cycling press and all the magazines, there would be pages of adverts for, and it was literally like a Grattan catalogue or an Argos catalogue, just listing products. And consumers would flick through the magazines and decide that they needed X new tyres or part for their bike, and you'd have to phone up the bike shop, place your order, they'd take all your details, and you'd send a check and stuff like that. And so we became the first e-commerce site. So Mitch and Harvey were the two original founders of it, two amazing individuals who I'm dearly close to these days still. And Harvey essentially just taught himself how to code and build his own website. And he was working, as a freelance designer, and had actually helped create some websites for other people, and thought, you know what, we could probably do this ourselves. His close friend Mitch had the bike shop, and so the two of them decided, let's create a bike website. And it's good now when you can go back onto some software, can't you, and see what websites looked back in those days.
Yeah,
when you go
the
back
way back end.
Yeah. When you go back to that in the 1999 version of Wiggle, you think, bloody hell, it's just all flashy and a bit weird, and it's great. And so what we did then was just think about consumables, really. And the first thing was, what products can we buy that we can ship through the post to people, and that people would want to, purchase online without any hassle.
Least path of resistance.
Absolutely.
Easy to ship, easy to get.
Yeah, I would just caveat that with one piece. At the point I've joined Wiggle, Mitch, Harvey's your kind of brilliantly, incredibly intelligent tech guy. Mitch is just like the most flamboyant, wonderful salesman you could ever meet. So the two of them have a great dynamic. And I think that what made it is this, as I sat in the middle of both of that. Mitch was desperate to be in e-commerce. And so as Wiggle went on its journey, before I even joined, it was selling everything. Wiggle wasn't even a bike shop. They'd basically had a selection of names all curated that were on Post-it notes on Mitch's fridge, and there was things like Phoenix and Wiggle was selected because I think it was his nephew read it and just went running around the house going, Wiggle, 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 and so that stuck. But at that time, Mitch had various friends and contacts, and on the wiggle.com, or co.uk to be honest, we bought .com, and that was another journey we had to go on. On the wiggle.co.uk, it was selling things like Swiss Army knives and vibrators and all that kind of like stuff you would have saw in the back of FHM magazine.
Okay.
And loaded magazines. So back when FHM was doing...
It was like an Amazon. It was like a boys' Amazon.
Yeah, that's right. And back when FHM was doing circa, 800,000, 1 million copies a month, when lads mags were the thing, Wiggle did its first database growing initiative. And Durex did a condom that was like a gold coin. It looks like one of those gold Christmas coins you get with a chocolate in it.
Yeah.
And basically they took an advert in the back of FHM and it said, get your free gold here. And so you basically got a free condom. In FHM, you saw the advert, you wanted a free condom, you put your details in, they posted a condom out. Next thing, there's like 10,000 people.
On a database.
Yeah. And so that was the start of it. It's like, okay, hold on. There's an opportunity here. There's a database. We've got all these customers. Now what do we do? And it was really very much like that. Then investments started coming into the e-com world, and money started ploughing in, and you've got all the kind of boys' toys websites and stuff started. And Mitch and Harvey just realised...
I want one of those .com.
Yeah, exactly. And so Mitch and Harvey realised that, this was going to be probably a category they didn't want to be in. But at the same time, Mitch...
From a competitive point of view?
Completely. From a competitive point of view, and the investment pieces. These websites all of a sudden were quite impressive at an early stage. And, as we saw time and time again through the early 2000s, late 90s, there was endless investment going in. And they all went boom and then bang, didn't they, in a short period of space of time.
When that boom or bang, whichever way you want to... I can remember that, around the sort of early thousands, I think it was, wasn't it? And you guys have been trading how long at that sort of point? Good 3, 4?
Yeah, 3 years.
And you sort of fell on because you hadn't taken investment and you weren't leveraged, or why did you survive when so many went the other way?
I think it wasn't, those early days, it wasn't necessarily about survival for the e-com business. That was being done as a bit of a side room hustle to the bike shop, you know, so it's just being done out the back. There wasn't really an investment in it. There wasn't really, it was just a thing. Do you see what I mean? So it was when I joined in early 2001 is when we really focused on, it
and
being
that was let's turn this into
a proper bike shop and a proper, let's make ourselves the online retailer. So at that point we moved into a warehouse in Portsmouth. We had 5 members of staff, and Mitch and Harv invested,
And what sort of revenue at that point was that business doing?
Yeah, so it's brilliant. So the revenue journey was amazing. So I joined it, and it was doing good revenue. It was doing £250,000, which
for an e-commerce site at
that
the
no
back
one
of a
really,
bike shop
that no one really,
knows.
So it was doing good. And touch on the revenue piece was an incredible journey. So that first year, then we doubled it to 500. The next year we doubled again to 1 million, and then doubled again to 2.5 million. Then we went to 5, and then we ran out of space that year, so we didn't get that. So we had to take another warehouse, and we were kind of hindered by a few things. And then sure enough, it jumped to 11 and 18 and 28, 38, and then and it was just an incredible graph, and it kept going up until when over 100 million. And you think, bloody hell, when's this stopping? And phenomenal. But the journey was phenomenally interesting because you're all the way trying to do something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, there's no roadmap.
No, so we're the first online bike store, so you're convincing consumers why they should buy online. So the 2 bits that I really, made sure that were front and centre of everything we were thinking about was from a customer service point of view, and I guess from my old Scout days was, treat everyone like you want to be treated yourself, and just put the customer first. I think many brands still don't do that, but and John Lewis and Marks and Spencers and were kind of testament to that for some time. And what I mean by that is, let's think about the end user constantly and consistently in everything we do, and especially now, it costs so much to acquire a new customer.
I guess the big growth came out of everything around the bike, I'm assuming. But is it about returns? Is it about how's that practically play out in where no one's done it before?
Triathlon was going big. London Triathlon was a big thing, and triathlon was growing, and I realised we needed to get into the triathlon space. And so I picked up the phone and started chatting to the brands who were selling all the wetsuits, and they were all categorically united, and no, we're not going to sell to Wiggle. We will not sell to Wiggle. And we're not interested. And no one will buy a wetsuit online. Fast forward 2 years later, we're the biggest triathlon store in the planet, biggest wetsuit seller. We're doing 10, 12,000 wetsuits a year.
What a difference a day makes.
Yeah, so all they've done is fired me up. When they've said that.
They've just annoyed you.
Yeah. And, so...
They've prodded you, and that's all that needs to happen.
They've told me that actually that we've got a little monopoly here and we're not interested and we like it as it is. All that's done, like I say, is made me realise that we need to look after the customer. So we need to be better. So coming back to that point around how do you look after the customer, in those cases with wetsuits, typically you'd have to go into a store, try one on, what bike shops are like, they're male-centric, probably not got great changing rooms. Certainly if you're a female, you can be quite intimidating. Back in those days, they weren't a great place. There was no, not much respect shown to customers, I think, in some of these stores. And you were treated in a weird way there, that you either were brilliant at sports and you were a passionate thing, or you're just, from a bike shop point of view, it just felt like
tire kicking.
Yeah, and we used to go around those shops and see, right? So we'd go in there just to experience what they're like, to understand, okay, how do we be better? What can we do? And so the first thing was, right, we are going to start selling wetsuits, so let's give people the comfort of trying them on in their own home. Let's allow people an understanding of how to try a wetsuit on properly, because obviously you want a bit of, put your foot through the neoprene, so how do you put a bag on so your feet slide through nicely and all that type of stuff. Let's sell it to you and allow you free returns, but let's not put you under pressure to try that wetsuit on. Let's give you 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to try the wetsuit on and decide when you want to send it back. actually, let's let you go and swim in it. What's the model look like if you use it and then send it back? And the reality is that we can create a model that allows us to sell wetsuits. And this is the same for any category. I'm just picking out wetsuits. Let people use it. If they don't like it, send it back. We'll give you a full refund.
And did you look at the graphs and
and you're looking
actually
at
they just don't send it back?
Yeah, it's exactly right.
You,
They
exactly. Value your trust
exactly.
in them.
It's exactly right. And so very few came back. And then the model's simple, isn't it? Actually, those ones that come back, we sell on the eBay store or wherever, and you've got your money back anyway. But ultimately, you've got a customer.
I think that exists. That pertains now. That's. And when you're in a world where bricks and mortar are having such a hard time and e-commerce seems to be doing so well, I met a guy that a guy called Nathan Hill from Stance. He told me a story about rather than the retailer having to take that back, that they'll take it back, a guarantee on the underwear and the socks that they sell.
Yeah.
And it just de-weaponizes that sell. So my wife that won't buy a bike online, well, the shop she goes into, they're snooty as hell. They don't take her seriously, and you could send her a bike next day. She could try it as much as she wants, and if she doesn't like it, she can send it back. That's the sort of thing that converts people over to your side for sure.
It converts. Not only that, she will continue to be a customer, and ultimately, she is going to tell most of her cycling friends something positive about the journey. And that's what you're doing, aren't you? You're trying to build a community, particularly in a sport that's sometimes a bit nichey. You're trying to build a community. One person slating it and having a negative word gets past 4 or 5 people.
Because it's such a close-knit community.
Exactly.
So there's benefits of selling into a niche.
Yeah.
But you've got to be careful that you don't.
Yeah. So, so that early days, what we were doing was, the search bar on the website was the most interesting thing we had, right? Because people were coming on to the site, searching for things we didn't have. Each week we'd run reports of what's being searched for.
Pull it and put it on.
And then, which is no different to...
So you suddenly become... And I we met very long ago.
Yeah.
I don't know you that well, but I can remember then you launched an apparel range. You built the brand for the apparel range. And I guess that was driven by the fact that people were buying those things elsewhere.
Correct.
A commercial decision.
Yeah, we built a, £25 million cycling brand, which is, under the initials of DHB, which is mine, Mitch and Harvey's initials. And, we just focused on amazingly great product that the customer wanted by the look of it, what they were searching for, and a affordable price,
There's another bit to this, though. I know you're saying it's all about the customer. There's also a big bit about you and how you're working in this sort of dogged, I'm not letting go. They said I wasn't allowed to do it, so screw them. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, that's in there. So that hold on, what brands were selling and are selling can be better. So there's a bit of definitely I can do better than you, so we're going to make it and do it better. There's definitely a bit around, I wouldn't say I had an ego back then, but there was definitely I wanted,
Well, it's all going right. Everything's going right.
Yes, that's right.
Of course you've got an ego. You're like, I'm nailing this.
Yeah.
I can't do anything wrong.
I did do a few things wrong, but yeah. It was just, there's an amazing story. So there's this brand called ASOS, which was like the biggest, poshest cycling clothing brand in Europe at the time, or in the globe. And these were cycling shorts, 150 to 200 pounds. This is 2006, 2007. And it was, the most comfortable bike short in every review, in every magazine. It was being searched for all the time on our site. We couldn't supply it because they didn't want to give us the stock. And Wiggle wasn't a place for them. They didn't want to sell in bricks and mortar. So despite us showing, well, this is what sales would look like, because we can demonstrate how big the search is for it.
They just
reference it against the data of how many customers we got on site, conversion, blah, blah, blah. Like, here's an assumed amount of volume. They weren't interested in dealing with it. So that is probably one of my, when I took on one of my probably most arrogant, egotistical missions to date. And
if they won't let me have it, I'll build it myself.
Yeah, but I'll build it myself with your brand, and then we'll make a statement. And probably, maybe it turned out right. So thankfully it was the right way. But essentially through a network I had, we went round Europe through bike shops and some distributors. We sourced all the ASOS stuff. we could get our hands on. So I started buying it through.
So you literally bought it all
Yeah,
up?
so we're buying it. So we bought £500,000
At just under retail?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're making
no margin. And particularly when I
But
tell
you
you what we
made
did in
your
a minute.
point.
Yeah, bought £500,000 worth of stock. And for that new winter range, had it all shipped into the UK. Obviously, there was no Brexit rubbish then, so it's easy to move stock around. Had it all sat into here. I had some friends who were journalists in the magazine, so I knew when all the new campaigns for the new winter range was going to be live. I knew that the product was going to be in the magazines getting reviewed. We can assume it's all going to get 10 out of 10. So at that very time, I took adverts out in all those magazines with this new stuff available at 25% off straight away. And then, bang, we went live with it.
Drop the grenade, stand back.
Yeah, and literally did. And then sure enough, my phone rang from the UK distributor. I won't use expletives. He shouted down the phone, but he didn't want to speak to me in the past, and now
he's very keen to speak to you.
He's very keen, and he turned up in his fancy Bentley that afternoon. Had driven down from Shropshire, and obviously he was worried now because like his business and everything he was doing as a distributor of it was, in pieces because his retailers are like, what the hell's going on? The brand's been blown up, and then ultimately it escalated, and the owner, Roach of ASOS, he was in Switzerland, phoned me up, said, what am I doing the next day? And essentially invited me on a plane, and I flew over to Switzerland. And I won't tell you what he said when I arrived at the airport, but he made this insinuation about,
do you ever want to go home?
just like, thank you, or not thank you at all, but what have you done to our brand? You've blown it up. And it's like, well, just treat people with respect. And maybe, I asked for it. I sent you emails. They're ignored. We didn't need to get to this, but, here we are. And so we had a great lunch, really boozy lunch, and, by a lake in Switzerland. And, I explained to them as the brand owner what the opportunity is of Wiggle, why e-commerce was so big, why they were naive to neglect it. And we shook hands and dealt with it, and we became their biggest retailer on the planet and done it officially, And
it just shows it's not about being nasty. It's not about being aggressive, but it is about being noticed and having impact in those situations, because you can get given a no in business and you go, okay, I'll work. Another way that could have gone is you made a knockoff version of it that wasn't as good.
Yeah, and we did that as well.
But it's the tenacity of that speaks of your approach to business, which
I remember
Mitch and I going grew so fast.
Yeah, flying around the world, going to trade shows, and I distinctly remember, we were going onto stands and trying to explain what this Wiggle was, So we were the biggest online retailer in the UK, arguably on the globe, but because no other country was doing it very well. And, we're going onto the big stands, so Nike are in sports, Oakley, Shimano, and all that, and just no one would talk to us, And I just remember how that felt. Just think, these are mad, It's just they're just running these small little bike shops. What are they doing? To literally 12 months later, that was when our kind of turnover had jumped from say 10 to 20 of million. Then
suddenly,
and like we're welcomed onto these stands. So the year after, it's just we don't even have to go. The shows are it's just mind blowing, and we became this huge beast, and we didn't realise what damage we were doing into the domestic or global markets as well. So Australia became a huge part of what we're doing, because you were able to ship things into Australia for very little, and their customs duty levels at the time were so high that we were able to ship in there, and people were buying stuff for 30-40% less than that market. And it was the same story everywhere we went. So I went down there, and running was big for us at Wiggle, so I wanted to sponsor their equivalent London Marathon. They weren't going to let Wiggle sponsor that. The organisers accepted it. 2 weeks out from the event, we were turned down as a headline sponsor. 2 weeks out from the event, because there was so much noise about Wiggle in Australia, how it was going to ruin their domestic retailers and stuff. So again,
it was also a time where there was a lot of finger pointing at online. Full stop. The idea that this wasn't. I think if we look back now, and for those that are younger, they won't even realise there was a time when these things didn't exist.
Yeah,
and people fought against change. It's a societal piece as much as anything else. The idea you can't walk down the shops, but change is change, and there's people that have to be part of that.
Yeah, and so many brands we all now buy online. whether it's the most premium brands, or whatever it is, they weren't available. You couldn't do that. You would, so to cover off that Australian piece is like, we were told a few weeks out that we couldn't do it. A huge activation program we had planned. So the only way to kind of get around that was obviously the only way to deal with it is put a load of aeroplanes in the air with massive wiggle banners and fly them, just fly them round the race all day. And so that's what we did, just to make sure that wiggle was still there. You can't control us.
I mean, it's another lesson, whatever it takes, whatever it takes, and being bold again.
Yeah.
It's obviously at this point, Wiggle is becoming huge.
Yep.
There's loads of people involved in the business. There's different people you're meeting all the time that have aeroplanes that will fly you to Switzerland. And it wasn't that long ago you were sitting in the back of a bike shop. So there must have been an escalation. And earlier on, before we started recording, you mentioned the term imposter syndrome, and you sort of, how did all of that play with the guys that were running that business when it started getting to that sort of 50, 60 million or wherever we are? What were the pressures that were coming into that, and how did that affect you?
Yeah, so two amazing humans came on board, Mark and Adam, as the lead board members from the private equity company. They were previously involved with Fatface.
Okay.
And Fatface, Jules, who was one of the founders of Fatface, was a close friend of Mitch, and that's kind of how the link came in. So from 2006, all of a sudden, we had proper board meetings, and we're talking about a business that didn't have much, we were flying by the seat of our pants. There was there was some reporting, but it was just, essentially basic reporting. There was no financial reporting really done. It was literally at the end of each month, where are we at, blah, 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 keep going.
Yeah.
We were managing stock in a really interesting way, but Harvey created this system that allowed us to essentially, we only held stock to last us for like 2 to 3 weeks. So the business was just constantly churning through its stock. There's no debt in the business. It was just a wonderfully lean machine.
Just in time before.
Yeah.
Just in time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all of a sudden we started having these board meetings with these two guys, and it felt weird, really weird, because Mitch and Harvey are there. We've got two investors. They've encouraged us to put a finance director in, so we've got a finance director called Andreas.
Like the bigger boys have turned up.
Well, I just felt like it was the grown-ups, right? It's just, the grown-ups have turned up, and I'm just sat there, and they're talking to me about what's our sales strategies and what's all this, and go-to-market plans for that, and I'm like, I don't even know the words they're using. Literally, at that time it was just buying stuff and selling it, and it just felt like a glorified market trader. It was just the bigger numbers and selling on a website, and it was really, really, concerning for me. Absolute imposter syndrome, without a shadow of a doubt. And it was, getting to a place where every month it was great because we were up, and our numbers were great. And each time we did a loose budget for the following year, they'd ask us to do a stretch one. We'd smash through the stretch one. So it was great. We were seen as like probably one of the golden boys of their investments at the time. I think it still is. But without a shadow of a doubt, nothing can compare with your own inner demons and your own kind of insecurities when you're sitting in a room with people that are incredibly intelligent, from a great educational background, sit across the board of loads of businesses using words that you have no idea about, talking about tax things that I have no clue about, and they're challenging you and asking you, have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? And the answer is no, we haven't done it. And it took me some time to start to feel some confidence in myself. And we brought a chairman on board from David Cox was his name, and he was involved in Kingfisher Group. That was, obviously they set up
B&Q.
Yeah, and did Toolstation.
Yeah.
And Screwfix. So he was involved in building those and selling them and blah, blah, blah. And I had a really good chat with him. And actually, what I started coming to terms with over time was, what I've got as a skill is actually the ability to make a decision without, as that gut feel, yes or no, right, we're doing that, and sticking to it and activating it and getting on with that. And having a great team around that's unified, and everyone bought into the plan, and everyone committed to what we're doing, and a real vision for what we're doing. Yes, I had no idea about the stuff they were talking about, but equally, I started to believe...
Takes a while though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it took a long time. And equally, I started to believe that actually they couldn't do what I can do. And the reason they've invested, and the reason they want to be part of that, is because we've got something that they can't do.
I think that's the big flip, because although it's nowhere, my background's nowhere the same. It's not on the same levels, but I think anybody has had those moments where they think they're not measuring up in the boardroom, and if you think about the listeners that might listen to this, there could be people that have just been made a marketing director or a CMO, and the truth is they have not got a bloody clue what they're doing, and they're sat in but it's that reflection of there's a reason they hired you, there's a reason they invested in you. If they could do what you did, they wouldn't be investing, they'd be doing it.
Yeah.
But it's quite hard to look at that when you've got some smart guys in suits.
It's horrendous. I mean, I
with
remember
Rolexes.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember the amount, I was in tears some nights, after a board meeting thinking, I'm going to get sacked here. This is my thing and I'm going to get sacked. For no reason, just my own inner chimp and my own insecurities and my own doubt of myself, because, coming back to the school thing and all of that, how am I running a £50 million business? Why am I making decisions here that are just, what's happened? And it was amazing. We were doing all the hours you could imagine. It was, I was never around to, I had a young son. I was never around to see him. I was traveling loads, and even now to this day, I still can't remember half the things we got to do. And I still get reminded of, do you remember we went to this and amazing events I got fortunate enough to go to and incredible experiences.
But it's a blur.
I can't remember anymore.
And do you put that down to the amount you were doing, or the way that you personally were processing the highs and the lows?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the latter. Focus on the problems, never the good times. Always like thinking about what's next. Never, one of the things over time and over recent years, learning to do is really understanding who I am a bit and stopping after a day or an event and thinking,
take it in,
remember it, think about that, and not just think, well, what's next, because actually I don't remember so much of my life.
Has it changed going through that sort of, and we'll call it how it is, challenges with mental health, and it's an open sort of subject now that people can talk about, but has it changed how you deal with people that you brought into Wiggle after that, or the other businesses that you've been in? Has it played out? Do you think it's shifted how you manage people or understand people at all?
Yeah, hugely. When I stepped away after we sold it, I had an amazing, beautiful book written by all the staff who all wrote their own little piece to me in there, which is like just incredible. And
some of it was nice, yeah?
Surprisingly, most of it was. They must have pulled out the pages for the ones that were. And there's people in there, that started as just in the warehouse and what have you, that are now on, big salaries, that work their way through the business, and I've given them the tools to learn and the challenge to come on.
Did you not realise till you exited?
Didn't realise the power we'd had on people, and when you see it written, like people talking about, without the chance you gave me, I wouldn't have, or I don't think I'd be here with a house and a family, blah blah blah. And a chap who still remains really close to me now, he'd came for a job and he'd just been sacked from Halfords, and maybe I shouldn't have said his name. It's not. Yeah.
Bleep that out, Louis.
And he'd been fired, and he sat down, and I said, "Well, why have you left?" And he told me that, and I just looked at him and said, "Look, don't worry about it. We all make mistakes. Just don't understand. You're never going to do that again. Understand that you're not doing that to me." And he was one of those that he just came in. You empowered somebody. They've made a mistake.
They thought it was over.
Yeah, and he's flourished. Amazing individual. And and many of the people that were still at Wiggle are still with me now. And I think that's great. And there's nothing I like more than seeing that younger generation come through, and you're giving them the chance and giving them an opportunity. And so, yeah, for sure. And I think the mental health thing in business is really hard. I know of two people that have worked for me or around me that have sadly and devastatingly take their own lives because of problems in their personal lives. And and I can understand when your head goes, and it's a horrendous and horrible and dark place to be. So I think showing compassion to everyone, and when everyone walks through a door, you have no idea what they've just walked away from, and trying to treat everyone again like the customer with the respect you show yourself. And, I'm guilty for beating myself up continually and still do to this day. So supporting staff and encouraging them and ensuring that you show them great and you're grateful and you understand and be flexible with staff and allow them.
That can be hard to do when you're going through the stratosphere, scaling fast.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do. I mean, what's great now, society these days, I don't know, I still like to think it was better when we had no mobile phones and cameras and stuff, because I guess I'm referring to the days when you felt free. But, now there's so much communication and literature and stuff online about, signs of mental health and when you should reach and talk and how and all of that stuff. But I think for individuals now, it's a great place to be and communicate it. But if you look now at people that, maybe in the early 2000s and midway through 2000 into 2010, 2015, ADHD and things like that was such a unknown thing. I remember ADHD at school or, being talked about. It just felt like, this is for, little naughty kids who run around fast or whatever it was. And now actually, you realise that some people are amazingly, brilliantly creative. Unbelievable, and they're some of the most amazing individuals I've ever worked with. And just understanding that actually somebody with ADHD, it just means their processes are different, But in the past, we can't.
I think we're getting there on that.
We're getting there. We're not brilliant. We're not good, and we're certainly. I think some businesses are. I suspect that many aren't. But that's the modern world we live in. Why change is needed, but I think everyone has their own demons to some regard. I think everyone works to their own best efficiencies, and they need to understand how that is and how they're best working to. Everyone works, this world that we still kind of live in of like 9 till 5. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Some people, in our business these days, people are free to start from 7 in the morning or till 10 in the morning, and then they finish when they finish, right?
Understanding these challenges and trying to find out ways to help other people on them is something we're both interested in. And weirdly, the team here with my agency hat on, yesterday we had a sort of away day, and there was a big talk about personal honesty, and you could see people's shoulders going up and the sort of fear of people being honest. Also, the idea of confrontation in a good way, of positive confrontation, of saying, stepping in when someone doesn't look all right and not accepting the, I'm fine sort of piece, and not giving up on those sorts of people. These are mechanisms that we're only starting really to bring into our own practice here in our business. And I'm someone like you that has suffered significant sort of impact from mental health issues over the years, but you came out of Wiggle, you started other businesses. You've just mentioned something there, changing the working rhythm of the week. Are there other things or other advice you could people running businesses? There's probably people listening that have teams and they're thinking, have I actually even asked? Have I checked if anyone's all right? And, you call it a commercial requirement to do that because you don't want to have people long-term off sick, or an emotional because you're a human being and you should check. Are there tips you could give people of things that they could try in their businesses that might make a more supportive, nurturing environment?
I think it's probably easier for somebody like you or I when you've been challenged by your own head. And that allows you, I think, a wider vision of how that might apply to other people. And I know, many individuals who just don't think about it, just,
because it's not part of their life.
Just don't get it. Or, it still doesn't exist, it's not a thing, I think there's a lot of great resource out there these days for learning and understanding how to look after and how to treat staff better. I think also sometimes you and I, running a small, medium-sized business, sometimes it feels harder to do than big corporates, where big corporates will have a team in place to manage staff well-being and think about additional resources for those staff. So I think it's really different on different levels based on the business and whether the owner of the business genuinely gives a
fuck.
Yeah.
Thanks to beep that if you want, but
yeah, but it's absolutely true. And if he doesn't, then I think it's bloody, it's a hard pill to swallow. Because at the moment, you just got to look at
I'm starting to
thing in the news where, you know, people saying, oh, we should work 4-day weeks and all that. And you can imagine the whole society like, oh, that's a joke. But actually,
But that's interesting. My initial reaction to that is as a commercial, I'm like, oh, for God's sake. And then my second reaction to that is why not? But I still have to, even with my reference point, as we said, I'm definitely not perfect at it. My first reaction still comes as got to get stuff done.
yeah.
I'm still quite driven from that. And I still have to find myself stepping back and go, hang on a minute. Do you remember when you have a nervous breakdown because you're working too many hours? This is a coping mechanism that could help other people who, you know, at their stage when they hadn't worked out how to cope, that could save them going through what you. But it's not my first reaction. So we've all got to like sort of remind ourselves, I think, of that it's worth investing in.
Yeah. And in any business that I've been involved in and any investments that I've done that have turned out to be all right, we have only got there because of the staff. It's not me. It's not
And
the
if your
leadership
staff
team.
are broken, you're not going to get there.
Yeah, it's not me. It's not the leadership team and all of that. So, you know, when we stepped away from Wiggle, you know, I had a bit of time off and focused on me again, and you know, rebuilt myself in a way that I was just exhausted, and then ended up getting involved in a few projects and starting a business that we now have as Green Snow, and we look after a bunch of clients. We run Team GB's retail, so we take care of everything they do for the Olympics. We look after some Nestlé brands and all their retail. We've got our own brands. We built the number ones.
And this is a fulfilment. And how would you describe what Green Snow is?
It's
got a great brand, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. It's great branding. Yeah, good work on that. It's a e-commerce fulfillment company for brands that don't want to do e-commerce and fulfillment. So essentially, you know, you might have, you know, a Nestlé business where they don't want to do direct to consumer, or you might have a sports person who knows he's got a big audience,
like an Anthony Joshua.
Maybe an Anthony Joshua is a good example, or a Team GB, or one of the big cycling teams, or you know, other brands that we're getting into, which are just lifestyle brands, you know, where they don't have a home online. So we have a business that builds the websites, manages the website, manages their ECRM projects, takes care of their stock and fulfillment, all their buying, gets involved with, you know, product design, product sourcing, product manufacturing, and then ships the product around, deals with returns, deals with customer service, all the stuff that brands don't want to do. So Team GB is a prime example. Come to the Olympics, there's Team GB product everywhere.
So if I get my Team GB towel, it's come from you.
Yeah. But that journey there with our business has been, well, one, it's been about making brands rich and us really busy. So we seem to have got the economics piece not quite right.
Welcome to agency life.
That's right, yeah. So we've got a bit of work to do there. But it's about great stuff. We've got a lot of young individuals in there, which is brilliant. You know, again, they flourished. We try and do as much as we can for the staff, you know, and think hard about them. So, you know, we have facilities in place. There's mental health support, you know, through apps and stuff like that. We've got, you know, we've really taken on board the time and the hours that people are working, treat them like a grown-up, treat them like we'd want to be treated, and ultimately remember that, you know, if it goes to 4-day week, if that's where we go, and people get all their work done and more in 4 days because they're excited for a longer weekend.
But you're not losing.
You're not losing. It's just,
if anything, you've got yourself a day on the weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as you could face stopping working that
right.
long.
So I think it's a good thing. But for me, I think the most important thing is, and again, don't get me wrong, we are blessed with a nice building and you know, with some natural, beautiful greenery outside and some places to get out and walk and all that type of stuff. I understand that a lot of people don't have that, you know, and so, you know, people and their destiny and where they go to work and stuff must be tough, and particularly tough if your head's not there. But in a modern world now, I think we've got into this place, haven't we, where brands, marketing, digital is just, you're bombarded with things,
everything,
aren't you?
Constant.
And actually, you know, I look at what we're doing, you know, with our marketing stuff and like what we did through the Olympics and, you know, with GB or whatever it is, it's just everywhere, isn't it? It's like, you know, and this world now where you're online and, you know, everything is just there, you know, it's not good for you. And you know, and yet equally, I believe it's not good for some people for their well-being, but then we're victims of doing it, you know, for our brands and for what we're doing. So sometimes I find that quite an
Do you
interesting.
know who Bill Hicks is? The
Yeah.
comedian Bill Hicks. So
Yeah.
he's one of my favourite comedians, and he says, if you're in marketing, fucking kill yourself.
Yeah.
And then he says that again and again for about 20 minutes in a set.
Yeah.
And he's honestly one of my favourite comedians, and he's not joking about that. So and one of the things that I built in here a long time ago is this idea: don't put shit in the world.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to live if you've got anything to do with branding, marketing, and you know, I love what I do. I love being in a world where you can create and you can impact loads of different things in loads of different because my mind needs lots of different stimulation all of the time. That's how I keep saying. But you're absolutely right. The plethora and just the barrage of messages. So there's an onus on, if you're listening and you're a marketing director, a CMO, is where do you build air into the brand and where do you build breaks into people's lives? Because if you've built communities and they're as reliant on you as they are on them, like there's an opportunity for us to actually think about how do we do something better here? And if that means not doing something one day, don't do something one day. If that means taking a break off that, you could find that's just as positive for your overall performance as not. And that's the same if it's a 4-day week, if it's your social media plan, if it's your advertising plan. And so there's something changing within the way that we need to think about the impact we have on people. That means that we can't just be driven only by commercial, because we'll burn everybody out and then they won't be able to buy anything. They won't be able to do anything. They won't be able to work. So I've been wrestling with this issue. And there was another guy I spoke to on one of these conversations, a creative called Timo. And we've talked about it a lot, this sort of the impact of the work we do in the world that we're in and how we can turn it once in a while to something positive. And I haven't worked out the answer at all. But you do once in a while see examples of that, and you see it playing out really well and doing good business. And it's just trying to avoid that temptation to think that just being send the whole time is doing a good job, because it's not. We've got to listen. And that's the same listening to your team, listening to your customer, listening to the communities around us. It's a hard thing to do well.
Yeah.
But it's something that if we don't do, I'm worried that the whole world will, that we'll just burn the whole world out in that way. So
I think it's getting harder and harder for brands to come up with something different that really works. I still remember was it called $1 Billion Shave Club or Dollar Shave Club?
Yeah, the Dollar Shave Club, very famous.
Yeah, and those type of things, and
they won't ever stop. Someone will always. It's just you can't come up with.
Yeah, I can't. I'm too old. But what I mean by that is that it's wonderful when you see something cool and new and innovative,
and it's fresh,
and then it just becomes a thing, doesn't it? The amount of alcohol brands that are being created and they're all following the same thing, and actually sooner or later somebody will come up with a slightly different way of doing it, and that's great and that's exciting. And I think it's really, like I said earlier on, it's bloody hard to get new customers. It's really hard on social media to get traction.
I think
to some degree.
You have come up with something new. You are interested in things that are new because you're involved with Pure, which is the electric scooter brand, and there's challenges with Pure in terms of regulation in the UK. But this is where you are looking for what's next, what's going to happen. So with Pure, how did that come about? Because that's nothing like pure fulfillment. That's saying this is something I can invest in that's actually significantly different to what I'm doing day to day.
Yeah, I got introduced to Adam Norris, who founded Pure a few years ago. And
this is Lando Norris, the F1's dad?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I met him through a dear friend of mine, Simon, who's an incredible human. And, he built a brilliant business. He built a company called Play Sports Network, which is the famous YouTube cycling business for Global Cycling Network and Global Mountain Biking Network. That's again we take care of all the retail, but it was an investment piece that a few of us got involved in, and it was it's amazing. It's 8 billion views and 18 million followers and stuff. It's a phenomenal beast. And so through Simon we met Adam, and the conversation about getting involved and investing in this brand came up, and so we decided to do it. And for me, that was really interesting because...
Was it purely a commercial? So you're way braver than me with you've taken risks, and when you think about that, is that purely a numbers decision? Is it a belief in the person? Is it a belief in the technology? Is it a mix?
That's a really good question. So ultimately, you're always hoping the investment piece comes off.
Yeah,
that's the.
Let's be honest.
And there's times, it's still a startup, really, that business. There's times you think, this is going to be tough. But I believe, and again, from all my traveling and seeing the world, I think mobility for people is just screwed, right, with this current.
Has to change.
It's got to change. And you'd go to some cities around the world and think, well, this is brilliant. I read a thing the other day in Norway, 94% of cars sold in August were electric cars. And just think, bloody hell, the infrastructure. Imagine that if that was the numbers in the UK.
And that's in a cold place. So
yes.
those batteries are really taking a beating.
So I think, moving around the UK and England and southern England in particular is a challenge. I think sometimes it's easy for me to sit in my house that's outside of a city, where I drive everywhere because you can't walk. There is no buses and what have you, no trains nearby you. Put myself again in the shoes of others. And if you live in a city, you want to get from a place to place or a work to work, you've got two options at the moment, haven't you? You've got a bus and public transport, or you've got a bike. And both of which have their challenges. Electric bikes is a good thing, but they're heavy and they're big. People don't want to arrive at work sweaty and hot if they've ridden a bike. People don't necessarily want to get on a bus and sit amongst everyone else, and actually getting outside and breathing your own air and putting a podcast on or some music or whatever is a wonderful way to start your day before you head into an office. So what options are there? And, electric scooters, having used the higher ones that are available, and I always use them when I'm, I love nothing more than when I'm in a city around the world, just getting on some higher scooters and darting around, because actually I found some of the coolest shops, little bars or cafes.
Much,
I bloody love it. It's much better than sitting in the back of a taxi or an Uber or whatever. So I've used the higher ones. I thought, these are great fun. I've had great fun on these. And then you start to see as you drive through cities, and when you pay attention to it, the amount of people that are on them that they, in their high vis outfit or whatever, they're just using them as a functional tool to get from work. So I believe that there is absolutely a place for electric mobility to be at the forefront of modern city life, certainly here in the UK. The challenge is, at the moment, private ownership of them is only allowed on private roads, so they are an illegal product to ride.
And some people might think you're allowed to because they see kids bombing around on them, but
that's right.
It is illegal
to
sell.
Ride.
You can sell it,
it's not illegal
to
sell. Yeah, so so we sell them in Halfords and Currys and what have you, and they sell well. But I assume
for that real big boost.
I assume that everyone is obviously riding on private land with them. And
absolutely.
But at some point, legislation will change. In the King's Speech and what have you, I suspect 2026 there will be hopefully a change coming. If we want to meet as a country and what have you, if we want to start meeting our city emissions and all that type of stuff, we need more options, and bikes is one and e-scooters may be another. The challenge is, at the moment, we've got higher scooters in cities, but they're often dumped on the side of a road, or they're kind of like treated like, often, in the evenings maybe people are driving around on them a bit carelessly with a few too many beers in them and stuff, and so sometimes they do get a bad reputation.
But equally, there's challenges for any piece of transport.
Yeah, and again, it's the private ownership piece is different, right? There's a big difference between, a group of individuals tearing around from pub to them on them, to somebody who's getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, going to work, hasn't got the time to walk. Buses don't get them there, but a scooter can. So I think about legislation, how it's managed and stuff, is the right way forward. So coming back to the question, I invested in that because I believe that,
it's got to pay off.
I believe that at time there has to be a change in how we treat mobility.
And have you ever had an investment where because I think this is really fascinating when people are thinking about, okay, well, how do these things work? Do you guys all just sit there and go, just hold your nerve until it's a...
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's, from I'm talking from a personal point of view, right?
And everyone's telling each other it's great.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
here come the demons.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, bloody hell, and it is hard. And, and actually there's a round of investment being done at the moment on Crowdcube. So it's, it's literally started on Monday, which is to raise funding for us to push into a few other countries where it is legal. So again, in Germany.
And what do you get if you invest through Crowdcube? Just in case there's some listeners that are thinking, I want a piece of that.
Yeah, but it's all different depending on the value you put in. So if you
get a scooter
at a certain level, you do, and if I think at one of the higher levels, you get grandstand tickets for F1 and all sorts of bits and pieces, because obviously through Adam he has a slightly good connection to F1. So I think at any level there's something. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, like you say, I do sit there sometimes. And it's like, bloody hell, come on, UK. But the challenge is we're a UK business based in the UK, but we're selling scooters all around the world. It just happens to be based here. So the amount of scooters that we're selling into France, where it is legal, is phenomenal, and the amount into,
And what's the competition like on something like that? How many? There must be.
I think it's a big difference between what we're doing and trying to create as a brand to the competition. So there's a couple of Chinese brands that do a good scooter, but they've got no brand, right? It's just a functional thing. It's a bit like when LG came in with their TVs, right? It's a functional bit of kit. Whereas what we're trying to do is build a brand, and so by building a brand, we've created a product that looks different.
Some equity in
it
looks
different to the rest. That's interesting. There's a bit of a piece there, and so the bit of work we're doing, like I say, it's a startup. We're doing a huge amount of work internally at the moment to define actually who is our target customer, who is our customer, who are we trying to talk to, because at the moment we sell to a real mix and we want to put them into cohorts and really understand, are we talking to them in the right way for each one of those cohorts? Does our brand resonate with those people? Where are we selling to touch those points? And does the product price point and image work for those ones? And it's brilliant, because that's the bit I think is fascinating. Yeah, because that's probably the most exciting thing on this journey with it. Actually, yes, the brand's existed for a couple of years now. Yes, it's got product, but really we're at a stage now where what we're doing is setting ourselves up for when legislation does change, and it will change.
And just going back to what you know best.
Yeah.
How do I connect it to the customer?
Yeah, exactly.
And bring value to that customer.
Funnily enough, I was driving in here today, and there's a guy in a bright orange high-vis suit who was clearly on his own private scooter, because you could tell it wasn't one of the higher ones, tearing along by the dual carriageway to where all the warehouses are. And it's like, I see him and that inspires me, because I'm like, we need to be talking to you and everyone in that warehouse. How are we doing that? How do we talk to those customers? And it isn't through maybe some of the existing channels that we're on, because we've got to think about these different cohorts of customers. For sure, we've got a bunch of customers that love F1 and love Lando and love the fact that Lando and the F1 paddocks.
That isn't going to get you your investment back.
No, that's not going to get exactly right. It's, the masses and the commuters and all that type of stuff. So that bit is really exciting, because again, how do we get in front of those? What is the brand narrative that we create for that?
If you think about the young you that was told he couldn't sell those shorts, and then did that trick on the Swiss guys.
Yeah.
Do you still approach it with that sort of tenacity, or has it changed? Is it because you're an investor rather than driving it? Are you sort of having to watch what happens a bit? Can you influence it to that degree? Are you going to scooter up to Parliament and start protesting for regulation change? I mean, what's next on it?
Yeah, I've got a really good relationship with the team there, and with Adam in particular, but with the marketing team. So I'm close to what we're doing.
So you feel like you can influence?
Yeah, and some of the people we put in there are from, unsurprisingly, some old Wiggle people or whatever they might be. So I feel like I know what we're doing. I feel that the people that we're working with to understand our customers, agencies or individuals that get it. But there's a great team there. There's a great team when they're on that journey. And, what I mean is that it's vital that they flourish in that environment and they all create something really quite special. And I think...
And is that where you get your kicks?
Yeah, watching the team. And often sitting in a meeting and just asking the odd question and throwing the odd grenade in, I love doing.
And seeing how they react.
Yeah, but...
Without you giving the answer.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a nice feeling. Yeah, and let's be clear, I don't have all the answers at all. But I like to think that, I might just phrase something in a way that makes somebody, think differently, or is there another way to think about that, or be thought about? And actually, I think one of the things I've really started enjoying in life is not being involved in it all day, every day, because it allows you to kind of like step back, look at it, and then just kind of come in.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, that's right.
I definitely look forward to that.
And I really enjoy that, and just allows you. Sometimes also when, teams really end up, you can go down a pathway, can't you, where you end up focusing on a little bit of the detail as opposed to the overall thing we're trying to do here. And you can realise without even knowing you spent an hour and a half and all you've actually discussed is something that's going to make very little difference to the long-term top-line numbers.
Yeah.
So is that the focus?
And when you think about, so we've talked through being the best waiter in the world, growing Wiggle to 180 million odds, exiting, having some time out, starting Green Snow and working with some amazing sports brands and corporates, really, and giving them a more commercial edge, and then these investments. When you think about all of that, is there a bit of advice or something that someone said along the way that you've kept really close during that? Or is there something that you could pass on through that you would stick by that's been the root of why you're still here and succeeding and still going?
That's a great question. That.
We can cut the pause out.
Yeah, cut the pause out, the long pause. I still don't believe it's my life, right? So ultimately, sometimes I look in and just think, bloody hell.
Well, you're a bit like looking in at the outside.
Yeah. And in the last year, I've had a tough year, outside of work. And actually, what I realise is I'm really grateful for the opportunities I've had. But ultimately, by building in a team and trusting in individuals, and most importantly, being comfortable with not being the smartest person in the room has been probably my biggest success, because just sitting, allowing, thinking, giving time to the people there and allowing particularly youngsters to develop and challenge without a shadow of a doubt. We haven't got any of our businesses that we've done. So I think for me, it's just being absolutely confident in where I add value, not trying to be, the master of all things, and just being 100% focused on the customer, what we're trying to do, and always putting myself in the customer's shoes in every decision we ever make. And I think that comes out in many of the kind of conversations I have with the brands. Is like, often gets referenced my deep underlying passion for the customer, because I'm always referencing them, because half the time you've got to step away from what a brand thinks is the right thing versus genuinely what a customer wants. And I think if we think about how the best brands advertise, it's just thinking only of what the customer wants and needs. And so for me, I've met so many people that clearly want to sit around the table and think they're the smartest person there and they're the brains and they're all this and that. And I'm not 100% sure that's true. I think when my nerdiness and obsession with space is constantly there, and I watch SpaceX send yet another amazing thing up in the air, yes, Elon Musk is brilliant, but those people sat behind those screens are unbelievable. Unbelievable, yeah. And so it's about the team, isn't it? And allow a team and give them the chance and let them have the ability to, control and prove it. Because if I wasn't given a chance and a couple of blokes and Mitch and Harvey didn't believe in me, I'm not here today, right? So they believed in me and let me flourish, and here we are.
Pass it on.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. And I think that rounds off our conversation in a perfect way. So I really want to thank you, Adam, for being so open.
Yeah.
And I hope we do it again sometime, but maybe not with microphones and a beer.
That's right, yeah.
Good man.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Thank you. Cheers, Ed.
That's a wrap on another episode of UnEDited. Make sure to like, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. Find all of our updates on your favourite social media and podcast platforms. Just search for the UnEDited podcast.